Hello everyone, I am the storyteller and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. My house is empty, but my friend, who is deaf and blind, insists someone is here. They say seeing is believing. But if I'd followed that advice, I'd be dead now. It was a deaf-blind friend who first told me there was someone in the house with me. I scoffed. I didn't believe him. I looked out across the windy, open, empty living room. I looked upstairs in the den and spare bedroom, and out at the patio and in the kitchen. It was just the two of us, but my friend Will insisted. While he was sitting on the base of the stairs, tracing his fingers along the ornate sculpted banister, I went upstairs to grab something from the den. He felt another set of footsteps on the stairs after mine. Following me up, he told me afterward, in sign language, when we sat down at the table for tea. Then he asked me who else was here. I chuckled, my fingers tickling his leg in laughter, and told him he must have imagined it, but he claimed he could smell them. When I asked him to describe the smell, he said it smelled bad, a sort of garbage smell, someone who needed a bath or hung out in the trash. Maybe my trash needed to go out, I said, and insisted it was just us. Are you sure? He and I were supposed to be working on the script for a game we were developing together, but he interrupted my suggestions to exclaim, "There, do you smell it?" I didn't smell a thing, nor did I see anyone in the living room with us. Does your nose actually work, or is it just a decoration on your face? Will burst, exasperated. When I dropped him off back at his apartment later after we'd finished our work together, as he was getting out of the car, he warned me again that I definitely have another person hiding somewhere in my home. His hands described the feel to me. 2 fingers of his right hand walking up my arm toward my shoulder, 2 fingers of his left following behind, softer. Then he tapped his hand along my arm, showing me the feel of the vibration. First heavier, more solid, my steps, and then lighter but still palpable, the second set of steps following mine and vibrating the wooden stairs. I patted his arm in affirmation and told him I'd search the house when I got home. Be careful, he said, his signing emphatically slow, and gave my arm a final squeeze before tapping his way to the front of his building with his white cane. As soon as I got home, I searched the house, but I couldn't imagine where an intruder might conceal themselves. It was a cozy house, 2 levels with small square footage. The rent was suspiciously low, but I chalked that up to the lack of creaky pipes and age of the place. I looked under the sink, in the closets, in the cupboards, in the spare bedroom. I even bought a camera and set it up, but all I captured overnight was myself sleepwalking. I vaguely remembered waking on the staircase and returning to bed. Other than that, the motion capture didn't turn on. According to the video, I was alone in my house. Still, the next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. It said that if you lose one sense, your others become sharper to compensate. But what if the reverse is also true? Was my reliance on my eyes causing my brain to shut out my other senses? What if I tried closing my eyes? It seemed silly. Even so, on a whim, that evening I went around the house wearing a blindfold. I was feeling my way through the kitchen, filling a glass with water from the sink, when I felt, the presence of someone. I couldn't pinpoint why. I just had the sense of not being alone. The hairs on my neck rose, and suddenly I was absolutely certain someone was coming up behind me. I snatched off my blindfold. Just me. Still, the feeling lingered for a moment, those goosebumps persisting on my arms. I put the blindfold back on and puttered around in the kitchen for a while. It was then I noticed the smell, like rotten meat, like unwashed flesh, spoiled and awful, and it was so faint, just wafting occasionally. The hairs on the nape of my neck stood up. I went upstairs trying to follow the smell, but I lost it almost immediately when I went into my den. I came back downstairs, my fingers lightly tracing the wall. Thud, thud, thud. I stopped because I felt footsteps behind me, felt the soft reverberation on the wooden staircase, just a beat after my own. It was just like Will had described to me. Someone was here, right behind me. I felt cold breath on my ear, I tore off the blindfold and whirled around. The staircase was empty. That night, as I lay in bed, I had trouble drifting to sleep. I was afraid of what might happen overnight. And sure enough, I woke up on the stairs, sleepwalking. But instead of returning to bed, I tried to keep myself in that dreamy state, and I held my eyes closed. My arm was cold. It took me a moment to realize that someone was holding my hand. A touch of icy fingers drawing me forward, those dead fingers leading me up the stairs. Every instinct told me to tear my hand away and run, but I let the dead hand guide me up until I was on the landing. The rotten smell made my eyes water as the door to the spare bedroom opened. An overwhelming sense of dread made it hard to breathe as the hand guided me across the room. Then my fingers touched the cool handle to the balcony door and pushed the door open, fresh air gusting around me. I yanked back, terror shooting through me, and rushed for the light switch. I was alone again. I'm now looking for a new place to live. Will is right. I'm not alone, and my life is in danger every night I stay here. I've got to get out as soon as I can. But my budget is tight, and housing is scarce in this area. So until I find a place, I've installed a bolt on the balcony doors and moved a heavy bookcase in front of them, and I've locked that spare bedroom. You see, I did some research and found out that the tenant who lived here before me died by hanging himself from the balcony of the upstairs bedroom. Before him, there was an old woman who lived here with her daughter, and the daughter was also found hanging. In fact, I don't know how many people before me have died here, seemingly by taking their own lives. The house is not reported to be haunted, because no one has ever seen a ghost here, but every day, I feel someone in the house with me, their footsteps treading just behind mine. And every night, those dead fingers take my hand and try to lead me out to the balcony. My girlfriend bought a new coat, and it changed her in horrifying ways. She was so pleased with herself. And you know that feeling? You've worn an outfit that turned you into someone else. Someone prettier, someone funnier, someone better. But Alyssa's coat didn't simply turn her into a new person. It turned her inside out. Like a doe-eyed dog, my girlfriend bounded into the kitchen with a fresh shopping haul to present. I smiled and started to nod my head in approval before I'd even seen what my girlfriend bought. It was a practiced response, but this day would be different in many horrible ways. Alyssa didn't dive into the plastic shopping bag. She surprised me by letting it drop to the kitchen tiles, as if it had been burdening her, as if she'd been itching to dispose of it for hours, itching to finally clutch her greatest find in both hands, the only thing she wanted to show me. That wretched, oppressive navy trench coat. It wasn't in a horrid condition. On the contrary, the double-breasted raincoat had clearly been thoroughly washed, given the faded remnants of a maroon stain around the right cuff. Still, that didn't conceal its age. I noted the threadbare bottom, marking numerous years of wear and tear, numerous years of scraping against floors and filth. Yet, despite all of that, the coat looked clean, refurbished. "Look at it," Alyssa cried hysterically, dribble collecting in the right-hand nook of her lips. It was endearing at first, the glee in her near teary eyes, the slight lump in her throat whenever she talked about the coat, looked at the coat, wore the coat. "Very nice," I said. "What else did you get?" "Who cares?" my girlfriend asked, laughing as she slipped into the long coat. "It feels incredible." "How much was it?" I asked, grinning as she twirled jubilantly, letting the lower half of her coat flow outwards. £10, Alyssa answered, hiccuping as she started to hyperventilate. "It should have been £100, Derek. 100. "Wow, you sure do find some gems from charity stores," I said. "Did you get it from Oxfam?" She nodded eagerly. "They had a mountain of things in there. Apparently some local family abandoned their home and begged the shop to take everything they owned." "That's odd," I said. Alyssa shrugged. "One man's rubbish is another woman's treasure." The shop assistant was shocked, actually. "Shocked?" I asked. My girlfriend nodded. "I found this at the top of one of the boxes by the door. The woman said she hadn't got around to unpacking everything, but she didn't remember that coat being there. Mysterious, I chortled. These strange drips of trivia would mean nothing until later. It was a little after noon on a relatively pleasant day, yet Alyssa insisted on wearing the coat whilst we relaxed in the garden. Even with the sun beating down, I dismissed that, but it seemed a little strange that she chose to wear the coat during dinner too. And I finally decided to say something when my girlfriend continued wearing the coat whilst we watched Bake Off on the sofa. I know summer has nearly come to an end, but it's not cold at all in here, I said. The heating's on. Take the coat off, Alyssa. She didn't reply immediately. I thought she hadn't heard me, thought my well-layered partner had been hypnotized by the screen, thought she'd noticed the rather appetizing cherry pie being keenly surveyed by Paul Hollywood's hypercritical gaze. Upon looking at Alyssa, however, I realized her eyes were glazed. She wasn't watching the program at all. She was shivering with delight as she ran hands up and down the fabric of her coat. I was about to repeat myself when she sharply spoke with a croaky, tearful giggle. I would sooner take off my skin. My stomach twisted. Not from my girlfriend's alarming turn of phrase, which I would have dismissed as a bizarre joke if the evening's horror had ended there. No, my stomach twisted in synchronicity with the cotton coat's twill pattern. It was not a trick of the light. The fabric was warping, spiraling as the sleeves tightened against my girlfriend's skin, as the lapels of the coat started to slice into her neck. Honey, I fearfully began. I lost my train of thought. Alyssa had lost hers when she first donned the coat. Neither of us understood what was happening. The color of her neck, at first, appeared to be the result of cut-off circulation. But as the fabric only continued to tighten its grip, I realized that a red twill pattern was forming across my girlfriend's flesh, stretching up her chin and along her cheeks. It was as if she were becoming one with the coat. I screamed and reached towards her, but Alyssa spun rapidly, robotically. Her vice-like grip halted my wrist before I managed to touch the coat. Don't, she warned in a whisper hardly her own. You'll crease it. Then my girlfriend turned off the television and rose from the sofa with arms stretching upwards. The fabric seemed to have stopped tightening, thankfully, and it groaned as Alyssa flexed her appendages outwards. She, on the other hand, hardly seemed aware of what was happening to her. Though her red complexion had faded, the pendulum seemed to be swinging in the other direction. She was starting to grow pale. Her skin appeared dry and cracked. Water, she begged me, before surprisingly removing the coat from her frail body. I didn't question it. I was simply relieved to see Alyssa finally take off the unnatural thing. She carried the coat and herself up to bed. Meanwhile, I tried desperately to convince myself that I'd hallucinated everything else. The coat didn't tighten of its own accord, I thought. That would have been madness. When I summoned the courage to enter our bedroom, a few minutes later, I was relieved to find the trench coat draped over an arms chair in the corner. Alyssa was lying on her side of the bed, looking rather unwell, yet somehow more herself. She smiled warmly as I handed over the glass of water and started dressing down for bed. Thank you, my girlfriend huskily said, taking a large swig. I'm sorry about before, Derek. I don't know what came over me. I smiled, having chosen to forget the unnerving thing I'd seen. It's fine. I know you get fixated on new things. It was just far too hot to be wearing that today. You know that, don't you? Alyssa gulped down the water, then nodded weakly. You're right. I did feel a bit peaky. I'm so thirsty. I'll probably be filling this up throughout the night. I'm not surprised, I said. You might have heat stroke. She rolled her eyes. I'm fine now. I just needed a drink. A big drink. I laughed, kissed Alyssa on the cheek, then turned off the bedside lamp. Night, she whispered. Night, you maniac, I said. It was the faint scratch of cotton against suede that woke me. Hardly a rustle, but loud enough to alert my sleeping mind. I turned to look at Alyssa. She was sound asleep. Dead to the world, as my dad would say. But my girlfriend was, typically, a light sleeper. And I frowned, squinting at her in the moonlit room. She still looked incredibly pale. Alyssa's skin was usually so clear, so well moisturized. On this night, however, it was peeling away. Her lips were full of deep fissures. It looked as if my girlfriend had been stranded on a desert island without sustenance. Then came that scratching once more. I sat up and my eyes shot ahead, settling on something I had been avoiding since waking up. The suede armchair, the trench coat sitting upon it. And as I eyed Alyssa's favorite piece of clothing, which had sleeves draped across the armrests, I became increasingly convinced that I was staring not at a coat at all, but a man. Pareidolia is a common phenomenon. In the dark, we've all seen inanimate things that look like people. We're pattern-seeking beings. But this wasn't that. I know what I saw. I saw a man. It sounded a third time. Just as I was about to dismiss everything and lie back down, there came another rustle. Only this time I was looking directly at the source of the sound, looking directly at the coat as it shuffled in the seat I'm on, almost imperceptibly. Mouth gaping to release a silent screech, I spun around to check that I hadn't lost my mind. Alyssa was definitely lying beside me. She wasn't sitting in the armchair. But I knew I hadn't imagined things. I knew I'd seen the coat move in the moonlight, pouring through slightly parted curtains. I knew there was a blackened shape wearing the awful item, which trailed down to the carpet. And when I returned my gaze to the armchair, preparing to be met with the oh-so-ordinary sight of a static coat, I was met with a terror beyond human understanding. There stood a lightless, gangly figure at the end of the bed, wearing the long navy trench coat and eyeing me with something that was not a face, was not anything but blackness. I yelled until my lungs deflated, fumbling with the bedside lamp and almost knocking it over as I turned it on. In response to the racket, Alyssa finally woke from her deep slumber, but it was too late. As if cowering under the harsh, revealing glow of the lamp, the coat tumbled to the carpet and the dark figure was gone. Alyssa doesn't believe me, even when I pointed at the damp trail leading across the carpet from the armchair to the coat at the end of our bed. I told her I didn't move it, didn't leave that foul-smelling trail of water, but she doesn't believe me. I know that it was all real. The proof is there on her skin, the telltale twill pattern on her neck and cheeks. My girlfriend continues to absent-mindedly dismiss it as a unique rash, but she isn't herself. She seems to have forgotten whatever she briefly realized for long enough to remove the coat, and she started wearing it again. I tried to throw the damn thing out, but it always finds its way back into our home, back onto Alyssa's body. It's draining her, drinking from her. I realize that now, draining the water from her body and claiming it for itself. It wants to become stronger. That's what I believe. It was crooked and unbalanced on that first night, but with every passing day, it grows in strength. I feel that. I see the wet carpet trail growing. Spreading throughout the house as something wanders our halls every night. And I want to leave, but I have to save Alyssa. No matter how much she drinks, she becomes weaker. I don't want to know what happens to us when the creature has had its fill. Roommate from hell. Literally, I never wanted a roommate. But after my girlfriend, Emily, moved out unexpectedly, I couldn't afford the rent on my own. So when I saw the ad, female seeking quiet, respectful roommate, private room, cheap rent, I didn't hesitate. The price was too good to pass up. The next day I met her. Anna was quiet and reserved, but something about her seemed off. She never made much eye contact, and her voice was barely above a whisper. Still, I figured it was none of my business. As long as she paid her share and didn't bother me, I could live with it. The first night in the apartment was quiet, too quiet. I could hear every creak in the old building, every gust of wind rattling the windows. But Anna was nowhere to be seen. Her bedroom door stayed shut, and I never heard her move around. By the second week, strange things started happening. At first, it was small, items misplaced, lights flickering. Then I started noticing odd sounds, like someone walking slowly in the hallway. I assumed it was Anna, though I rarely saw her. She was either always out or hiding in her room. One night I woke up to the sound of faint whispering. It was coming from the hallway. I got up, heart racing, and opened my door. The hallway was empty, but the whispers didn't stop. They were coming from Anna's room. "Anna?" I called, but no response. I knocked on her door. The whispering stopped. Something about the sudden silence chilled me. I decided to leave it alone and go back to bed, convincing myself it was just my imagination. A few nights later, I came home late and found her standing in the kitchen, staring at the wall. She didn't move, didn't acknowledge me. I cleared my throat, trying to break the tension. "Hey, Anna, everything okay?" Slowly, she turned to face me. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, her face pale like she hadn't seen the sun in days. She didn't say anything, just stood there, watching. It sent a shiver down my spine. "Anna?" I asked again, more forcefully. She blinked, finally breaking her eerie stare, then without a word turned and walked away, disappearing into her room. I didn't sleep that night. Things escalated quickly after that. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find my door open, though I was sure I'd locked it. Footsteps echoed outside my room, pacing up and down the hallway. The whispering returned, louder this time, almost like chanting. I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her. The next morning, I knocked on her door, more insistent this time. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. Finally, I turned the knob. It was unlocked. The room was empty. No bed, no furniture, no clothes. It looked like no one had ever lived there. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped inside, trying to make sense of it. That's when I saw it. On the wall, carved deep into the plaster, was a single word: Emily. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my ex, Emily. "I need to tell you something. Stay away from Anna." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. How did she know about Anna? Before I could respond, another text came through. "She's not real." Suddenly, the whispering returned, louder than ever, surrounding me from all directions. I stumbled back, tripping over my feet as the door slammed shut behind me. And then a voice, Anna's voice, but twisted, distorted, filled the room. "You should have left when she did." The lights flickered, and I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. I turned, but there was no one there. Just the empty room and the whispering echoing in my ears. I bolted for the door, yanking it open and running out of the apartment. I never looked back. The next day, I broke the lease and moved out. I tried calling Emily, but her number was disconnected. To this day, I don't know who or what Anna was. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear the whispers. Finally, thank you for following today's horror stories. If you have a horror, mystery, or haunting story to share, send it to us at Urban America Horror or email. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode when we upload it. We'll always be here waiting for your next horror story.